Dr. Odom, fellow classmates. Today we're going to be talking about how to build student engagement for students struggling with their mental health. And here we have a picture of the brain, and we're going to be talking about executive function. Now, during the pandemic, and we are in the second year, it is very safe to say that most of our students are highly stressed. Stress inhibits the proper functioning of the prefrontal cortex, responsible for processes that help us to learn, meet goals, carry out adulting tasks. And so you might see that your students are have less productivity of late. Maybe you yourself might be struggling with brain fog. And so this presentation, we're going to be talking about a number of strategies to get over that feeling of burnout and overwhelm that many of us have been experiencing, many of our students have been experiencing. So, as I mentioned, prefrontal cortex starts to develop around ages 0 to 4 and reaches full development at around age 25. You can be predisposed to having deficits in executive function, especially if you or your students have ADHD, um, autism, complex PTSD, etc. But many of us, even if we don't have those struggles, we still experience periods that our executive function might have impairment. So, how do we support our students? How do we create a learning environment where students support each other and are actively engaged in the classroom? Well, we can focus on strengthening their executive function skills or help them to use it more effectively. And here are the executive function skills. Here we have emotional control, flexibility, goal or directed persistence, metacognition, organization, planning, prioritizing, response inhibition, stress tolerance, shifting between one task and another, sustained attention, task initiation, time management, and working memory. Time management, and this came from a book, is called Smart But Scattered Kids. The capacity to estimate how much time one has, how to allocate it, and how to stay within the limits and deadlines, and it involves a sense of time that is important. And if you have deficits in executive function or impairment, or even you're very stressed, you have something called time blindness that makes it kind of difficult to manage your time effectively. So you need a strategy. So there are many strategies. You do what works for you. Stephen Covey's time management matrix doesn't really work for me. What I tend to do is I um, build momentum with smaller tasks towards a larger task and break up that larger task into smaller tasks to make it more manageable. Which one of the following practices does not foster a supportive learning community with your students? Here we go. Constantly canceling class or postponing assignment. So even though you're being accommodating, you want the students to have a sense of reassurance that you're not going to keep changing the goalposts because that might create greater stress. So task initiate. These are things to consider as a teacher that when you're designing accommodations for students, when you begin assignments, task initiation. So many teachers, that's not the teachers even, the textbooks, the way that they're formatted, they have like smaller assignments first and the biggest assignment all the way to the end of the semester. You might want to rearrange that. Yeah. Does your mind wander? Are you easily distracted when working on assignments? So we can assume that our students are easily distracted when working on assignments. Perhaps when they're in class and they have their phone in their hand. You have to be aware of that. Sustained attention, breaking up your lectures, your activities into smaller parts can help with this. Having made a list of steps you need to complete the assignment. Do you have trouble with finding materials or documents needed to work on the assignments? Do you feel frustrated when giving you assignments you hadn't planned for, and does that slow you down? So yeah, we're putting ourselves in the perspective of students. And are you able to work when feeling overwhelmed? So we have to acknowledge that perhaps you might even answer your yes if you put yourself in the position of your students, that students are experiencing this, and you have to design your course accordingly. Um, this activity is essential to be done the first day of class to give students clear expectations and the roles are clear. Um, Creating class commitments and agreements, right? So this is important. Expectations for the students, expectations for the teacher. You set a class expectations in firm, clear manner so that your students will know what they need to do to succeed in your class. Okay. One method to help your students adjust online learning is to incorporate mindfulness activities in the classroom. Which of these is not an effective mindfulness activity? Playing loud music, asking the class to dance together. So mindfulness, and this can be like a quiet reflection. Let's reflect on the material, and then later after class we'll write a journal. This kind of activity is probably better for students. Meaningful learning experiences. The goal of the online learning teacher is not to replicate face-to-face contact, but you have to accommodate and adapt. So no matter which executive functioning skills is a weakness for students, improving the skill will be difficult and require strategies listed above. Multiple resources encourage those working to change behavior and improve skills to write a plan that is simple and easy to follow. So the literature recommends that the students start with smaller behavioral change because it's easier to build a habit that way. And if a person expends too much time and energy in the beginning, that they're likely to give up. So if the task doesn't require too much effort, the person is likely to experience success and take on bigger challenges, kind of like gamification. Video game is kind of designed in this way. Okay. So let's move here. Okay, so we have to create a simple plan. Helping the students create a schedule includes restorative breaks can be a start. But in addition, they should be more specific to-do lists for class. Care responsibilities, academic class. Like actually, I ask my students to write minutes and turn in a minute reports for class. Setting the right environment. So students can benefit by, and teachers, you have visual cues for your space because it's hard to hold everything that you have to do in mind. So use post-its, use timers, you have journals, etc. Keep your room very clean. Might change of lighting, make it very conducive to work. I know what for me, I use lo-fi music, like very subtle. Removing. Oh, and also or you can recommend that students while they're working that they disable their social media, make it hard for them to check it, to put their phone in another room, etc. Task modification. So actually, the assignments that you give them, you modify the task, adapting the task to make it easier. Well, it doesn't necessarily make it easier to do. You still keep the same standard, but they break it down. So, for example, breaking down a writing assignment to smaller parts to make it easier to start tasks or sustain attention. And students may need to take notes by hand if looking at a computer is more likely to lead to the students checking email or surfing the internet during class. They ask the students to do a self-assessment. So students should reflect on the plan weekly, maybe even daily in some cases, and assesses how well the students following the plan, modifying it where necessary, and have accountability systems. For example, peer accountability, um, important for self-assessment and encouragement. Maybe even a part of your class discussion is that you do check-ins and then the students report how they've been doing, how well they've been doing. Rewards. The size of the reward should reflect the size of the challenge. So rewards such as you can give them, well, I mean, not really 15 minutes, but a little breaks. Um, you can show them videos after right? Watching a movie or reading a novel is rewarded for much bigger tasks, such as completing a section of an outline. So maybe, depending on how the class is going, you can reward them. You can, or they can give themselves rewards. A Pomodoro method is set up that way. Positive self-talk, students should be aware of negative thinking and encouraged to identify success and strengths and think positively about their ability to execute the plan, accomplish the goals. Progress is not always completely linear, so students should be reminded that change is going to take effort and time. So you want a good balance of positive feedback and critical feedback for students, and be aware that perhaps during this time that their self-esteem might be more fragile than usual. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is a grounding technique that can help students be more present in the moment, and this can help them manage their emotions better. Mm, Encourage them to take time to take care of their emotional health and well-being. That's very important. And finally, you're transitioning to the virtual environment. You're not alone. You want to share tips, stories, and best practices, and this class is a very good forum to do so. Um, so thank you for listening, and I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation.